Brehan, how y'all the first? You're the first, Brehan, to get on here. Chavez, how you doing, man? How y'all doing this morning? Um, good, good morning, Sister Bowie. Good morning. How y'all doing? Come on in, come on in. I won't be here long, just for a few moments. I wanted to say a few things. We always the first. Well, Brehan, you're the first online. Maybe not the first in person. I'm back on Mama Hightower. I'm back on. Happy for another morning. I haven't turned in lately. You sure ain't tuned in, Chavez. You out here living your best life. I'm just glad you tuned back in. Dewana Roby, how you doing? It's good to see you all. I uh I don't think I'm gonna be on here long. I wanted to say a few more things um, as we think about where we currently are right now in our country and all that we're witnessing around us, and just some things that have just been on my heart over the last several days. Um, you got you a certificate. You got your certificate as a member. Oh, Lisa, I'm glad we mailed it out this week. Ron is with me as well. Reverend Roby, good to see you, my brother. Good to see you. I want to say a few things. We're in a very interesting time. I can't tell who's here like I usually can. Um, we're in a very interesting time right now, and there is a lot going on in the world around us, and just a lot of things that are happening that I feel like a more cogent response is needed. And if I'm grateful for Brother Stovall who stepped in for me to give me a week to not write a sermon. Um, but I really struggled because part of it was like I really want to preach, specifically because I always believe God has a word. Every preached sermon, by the way, my philosophy in preaching is that a preached sermon is God's word for a given time. Um, God's word for a given moment. Brother Stovall, I love you dearly. And I think as I look around the world and I see the unrest, I think now more than ever is a time where the church really has to show its gusto. Um, Matthew says this, and I love to quote this passage because I believe in it. Matthew says, "Let your light so shine before men that they see your good works, and as a result of seeing your good works, they glorify the Father." And I want you to note what it didn't say. It didn't say that they hear your good words, but that they see your good works and that they glorify the Father in heaven. So I want you to know that I've been praying and considering over the last several days about and consulting with other pastors around the city about a response to this. Um, and by response, I mean what the church should do. Some things that I think we need to be aiming at is the culture of many police departments around the country has to change. And I'm not, trolls. Don't be on here talking about he being anti-police. We ain't here for that today. But the culture of police departments need to change. When you consider the Noble Group, which is it's basically the organization for black police officers. It's nationwide, nation of organization of black police officers around the world. And I mean, around the country. One of the things that they talk about was that there is a deep inbred culture in the police departments of almost every major city in the country, one that is rooted and gripped in racism. That is what that is. And it's a very deep culture of it. And a friend of mine, a minister, was telling me just yesterday that it extends from the police unions to the police departments. And I think that there is a need for a culture shift in those places. And I ain't the only one who said this. Many have said this. Much work has been done to try to say this and to try to challenge and change this. But I think a very tangible reaction, a tangible response, is for the church to put feet to concrete to work to change that kind of culture. And here's why I say that. I don't necessarily know if I need to convince you on this, but police who don't see us, we're working on the proposals for policing. I'll email you. Email them to me, Dustin. Um, po- if a cop, and when I say culture, let me tell you what I mean. I'm not just talking about police brutality. Many of you who are black, you know this to be true. That we deal with daily. What's the term I'm looking for? Daily indignities. That's kind of how someone described it. Daily indignities from police officers, or just people who just on some craziness. Daily indignities, and you know, I'm of the mind that a cop who can come out at you and before they even address you as a citizen and saying whatever they need you to do, can come out cussing, yelling, screaming, dissing you when you have not returned that to them. You haven't started off in that way. They just start that way. And many of us have been in those kinds of situations. I'm of the mind that if you can come out and you just automatically swing out the gate disrespecting us, then what is to say you ain't the one to put hands on us when you feel like you want to put hands on us? What's to say you're not the one to pull a gun and to pop a trigger if no one's looking, and then to create a story in 48 hours? Um, which you do know, by the way, that whenever there is a police shooting, police officers have 48 hours to turn in their report. Think about what happens in 48 hours. The creation of stories. That's a good question, Mr. Rap, Mr. Baddish. I don't know. I don't know if we can change people's hearts and minds. I just don't know if we can. I think it takes. I just don't think we. I don't know if we can. My mind is right now towards saying we probably cannot change people's minds and people's hearts, but at the very least, we can change laws and change policies that force people to challenge or to live with what they feel and think and to not act it out. And the reason why I think that's possible, we do it all the time. Many of us have jobs that we go to, and we have jobs and we don't like our bosses, but we don't ever tell our boss what we want to say. We don't ever act out a certain way because we don't like our bosses. No, there are policies and procedures in place, policies specifically that keep us from acting a certain way. Hey, Mai, how are you? That keep us from acting a certain way, that help us, that govern our behavior at work. So I believe the same thing is the case. If I'm paying taxes, property taxes, income taxes, and taxes on water, all of that stuff, to hear me, pay the salary of police officers. I am not paying police officers to disrespect me. I'm not, and we're not. I don't know if we can change our older hearts, but we can impact next generations. Yeah, we can. We can change laws. And this is what I want to challenge us to say. I think that some of our response has to be robust and full bodied. Let me tell you what I mean by robust and full bodied. Robust and full bodied means it has to hit on every level. There is a place for protesting, and we should be protesting. And I want to see a way for us to be able to do it, for men to go and women to be people of peace. And let me put a parenthesis here. I still am not convinced that the protesters and the demonstrators are the ones looting and burning buildings. I'm still not convinced. When I speak to people who were very active in the civil rights movement, and I speak to people who organize protests, even I spoke to someone just last night, it is commonly known among activists and protesters that there are oftentimes, get ready for this, it's going to shock you, there are oftentimes white supremacists who enter the ranks of these protests that intentionally break windows and intentionally throw bottles, specifically to evoke a reaction from the police, to cause things to escalate, to dilute the potency of the powerful words of the protesters. That's common knowledge among organizers. And if you think I think I'm lying, call an organizer and ask one. That you have to have a system in place as a protester and as demonstrators where you weed out those madnesses, because the bigger the protest is, the more likely people come to it. Um, we're not. We're not. We're not. There are anarchists who are showing up, and there are white supremacists. Minnesota said this. Minnesota got on a press conference and said there are white supremacists that are showing up at these events, doing things. So, but I'll even go so far as to say, in the 1960s during the civil rights movement, and I heard this from a civil rights leader. This is not me making this up, that it was said to many of the leaders that there are more FBI informants preaching black power than there are people preaching black power. What does that mean? It means that governmental systems have always used people to infiltrate these kinds of situations to undermine it and to weaken it. So let me say that. So I say that because I don't want you, and I don't think any of you doing it. I don't want you to label all the demonstrators as the ones that got us on a double lockdown now, because it's not them. There are people who are demonstrating and they're angry. Yeah, they're angry. There are people who are demonstrating and they're doing it with great peace. Uh, um, Sorry, they're doing it with great peace, but there are people who incite that. And so there is a place for protesting. And with protesting, there has to be people who are thinking and playing the long game. What I mean by the long game is this. We as the we have to these are some of the things I'm thinking. We have to first of all promote voting and education around voting. Can I tell you why I say that? I know it seems so disconnected. Let me tell you why I say that. Someone told me this. This is what I'm not going to reveal this person's name because I can't right now. But someone told me this just yesterday, that that by the time Donald Trump leaves office, he will have appointed 250 federal judges in different districts around the country that serve life terms, meaning these are people who will hold seats, that will write laws and set precedents that will drastically impact you, your children, and your grandchildren for the next 50 years. We need to educate people on the realities that African Americans specifically had a time in American history where we climbed and began to prosper even in the face of hate. And that was during the Black Reconstruction. W.E.B. Du Bois wrote a book called Black Reconstruction. I just ordered it and I plan to read it over the next several weeks. But we need to educate people on the power of voting. Because here's another example. Most of us who do vote, we go vote. And when we go down the list of judges, we just pick whoever aligns with our party, or we pick whatever name we remember hearing, not considering that some of these judges and some of these district officers that we're electing, they are the places or people sometimes that keep these injustices from being unchallenged. And so we need to educate people on how to vote. And I'm not just blowing rhetoric here. I'm having those conversations. We're having those conversations on how to be able to educate people, specifically on who these judges are. But then secondly, we have to be willing, and let me just say it, because I don't, I know that there are good police officers out there. I know there are people who join the police force not even to be whatever, but just to be able to serve the community. I know that beyond a shadow of a doubt. But many of them will tell you there are people who work as police officers that should not be police officers, and their behavior is oftentimes brushed under the carpet, and their unions protect them, and they're physically abusive to black folks, and they're very much so verbally abusive to black people. We should not be in a place where we are subject to verbal abuse just because someone has a badge and a gun and they believe they can. And the only way to challenge that is to challenge culture and policy. Now, um, I think that I think that oh Lord, I lost my train of thought. So we have to start organizing around the long game, and those are conversations that I'm interested in having, that I'm having with colleagues now. Is how do we organize for the long run, to better change things. Let me leave you with this, because I got to get ready to jump into my new members class. We need an informed electorate. You're not lying, Mr. Batters. We need an informed electorate. When we're our church compassion partners with this organization called the And Campaign, which is an organization that helps to help Christians to engage politics without falling straight loyal to either party. Because you have some that are party that could be locked to one party, and sometimes those parties are not even doing anything. Sometimes they say they are, but not. Sometimes they're just like, we ain't doing none of that, and they're just not. And so we try to educate. And so we held, for the mayoral campaign, we held forums where we brought all the candidates together, and they had to articulate their position. And we structured those questions where they had to say, beyond just smoke and mirrors and rhetoric, they had to tell us what they were going to do. Um, and one of the things that we said coming out of that was, this is good, but the mayor changes. We need to we need to have a mechanism where we educate people on the voting on the precedents that are set by the judges who are up for reelection. Who are these judges? Who are these Cook County appellate judges? Who are these judges? We just hear their names, and because they're not blowing a lot of smoke, they're not doing a lot, we have no idea who they are. And and some of them, I'm not going to say all of them, but some of them may actually be doing harm. And we don't know, because we don't have to sit across the seat from them. And some of them may be doing great, but we want to know who the good ones are and who the bad ones are, to unelect the bad ones and put good ones in place. We need to encourage people in law school to find tracks towards being judges. um, Long run thinking, not just emotional, because this, when the streets are dried up, when the protesters have lost their steam and energy, and every city basically. You're very right, Chavez. And as an alpha, we have a program called Voteless People as a Hopeless People. One of the reasons why that's one of my favorite programs is because I think about what started it. It understood that if you don't vote, you literally give up your voice. And I know that we're in a day where people are so they don't believe in the power. Sandra Parker, you want to join the new members class? I can have somebody send you a link, and you can join it now. It's in progress. It's gonna start in a few seconds. Um, Shoot me a note, uh, Sandra Wallace Parker, and we'll get you there. So actually, um, Sandra Wallace Parker, send an email to office at compassionbaptist.org. Office at compassionbaptist.org, and we'll get you set up. Or you can go to our website at cbchicago.org and click connect and fill out that form, and we'll get you connected. We'll get you connected. And so we're gonna have to take the long game, because the long game. See, if you take a long approach and use rallies and use protests and you focus them, that's how you get better effect. Uh, Sorry. It's a group of pastors we're trying to. We had a meeting last night over the phone to figure out something, and we're trying to figure something out too. So yes, to your point, we have educated people on candidates and not just select someone based on party. I think my ship is working on getting voteless and hopeless people. Please, Chavez, let me know. Because whatever I'm going to do with voting stuff, me and another pastor talking about that now, I would love to. I won't be able to lead the fraternity's efforts in that, or my chapter's efforts in that even, but I would love help in trying to do that because I really want to target that thing on a larger scale. We need to hit the streets and reach out to these young folks and let them know the importance of voting. Brehan, that's exactly the case. That's exactly what I'm saying, and the way to do it, because we never, and I agree with Septima Clark and people like that of the Citizen Education Program of 1961, that there is a narrative where blacks have always struggled in this country. We've always had to scratch for a living. But there was a time right after slavery, a 20-year window where we got 22 people in Senate. I mean, in Congress, we had 22 people in Congress, black folks. We had the creation of black schools, and not Plessy versus Ferguson schools. I'm talking about actual colleges. We had we had the growth of more doctors, more lawyers. We That's where Black Wall Street got its genesis. We started massive businesses. I mean, in that little Reconstruction window, um, right after slavery, black people made serious, serious gains. And all of those gains were undermined, watch this, by two things: long game playing, by people who put folks in office who voted for a president to get in office. I can't remember that president's name. There's a book here on my shelf that may tell me that that got this president put in office. I'll tell you exactly what his name is. And got this president put in office, and as soon as that president got put in office, he started to literally pull back so many of the gains, legal protections that African Americans had that gave us the space to be able to make those gains. Um, this is a good book I had to read for school right here. It's called The Forgotten Prophet, Henry McNeil Turner. Um, uh, so yeah, that's that. So we got to start thinking that way. And so I'm gonna talk more about this later, but I wanted to say that. I wanted to put that out there, um, into the spaces, um, to say we've got to think. We have to think long game here, and I still do believe that we do need to find ways to support the actual righteous protesters. By that I mean the ones who are actually trying to do it nonviolently and all that stuff. Um, the world is in trouble right now, and I think the last thing, we need to be praying, but we need to pray with our mouths and move with our feet. That's the best way I can say it. So that we are not just doing pietistic things that really don't do much in our time right now. Um, so yeah, friends, listen. I was very happy by my surprise yesterday. I was very happy, Sister Andrea. Thank you so much. Friends, I'm gonna chime off. My new members class is going right now, and I need to head on over there to lead that. But I wanted to say a few things. I pray your day is good. I'll see y'all in the morning. Y'all be very, very much encouraged. Um, even in light of what we see, be very, very much encouraged. It was good to see y'all too. I love you all. Y'all be blessed, and I'll see y'all shortly.